Now, typical kids, they first start to get a glimmer of body modesty very early, 3, 4 years old. They start to know, that's not when they get it and understand it, but when they first start to get a glimmer of understanding, they start saying, close the door, or don't look, or dad don't, mom don't, and they start to recognize that different parts of their bodies have different social meanings, and they start covering those things up and become embarrassed. I mean, a 2-year-old would have no difficulty running into a room and saying, I'm naked, and just think that that was very funny. But by the time they're 4, they're probably not going to do that. Now, very few people know how, or I don't know that anybody knows how kids get that. They suggest it's probably through incidental learning and mom and dad just saying cover that up or that's private or those sorts of things. I don't think there's a lot of strong teaching that goes on about it. I think it's sort of a natural developing concept. But for people with intellectual disabilities, modesty can be a very, very difficult concept. Firstly, if you take a look at some of the adults that I work with, they could walk stark naked through a room packed with people with absolutely no embarrassment. And people will say people with intellectual disabilities are disinhibited, and I don't think that that's true. I think people with intellectual disabilities have lived lives where they've learned to be disinhibited. I mean, some of these people that I worked with lived in wards where there was a bedroom with 60 beds in it, so there was absolutely no privacy, or they went to bathrooms where there was just toilets in a row, and they showered in a great big room with 12 other people. I mean, they got used to people seeing them. So when we look at the fact that boundaries is the most important safety skill that children learn, okay? Many people with intellectual disabilities simply don't have some of those boundaries. Now, if we take the institutionalization away and look at what's happening now, a typical kid learns those skills very quickly. It may seem like a long time when you're doing toilet training and you're doing all those other things, but they actually learn them fairly quickly. So for a kid with an intellectual disability, they don't learn them quickly. It takes a lot longer, which means that there's more people in the bathroom with them. There's mom, there's dad, there's babysitters, there's brothers, there's sisters, there's uncles, there's aunts, there's all sorts of other people in there, way more than typical kids are exposed to, because it's over a longer period of time. And because it's over a longer period of time, parents forget that they're teaching privacy. They think they're teaching toileting. So they start leaving, the bathroom door open and walking in and out and doing other things at the same time. So it becomes almost like a very public thing that's going on. There's not that sense of privacy. So we really need to start focusing, especially for those working with children, that they need to really be thinking that when they're teaching dressing and when they're teaching hygiene and when they're teaching toileting and they're teaching those kinds of private skills, they teach the skill in the context of privacy. They need to have that as a skill, because it's one of the very first boundaries that children need to have in order to understand their world. Public-private is so basic to how we see sexuality and how we see one another and how we relate to one another.